Well, one of the other things that James was talking about was he's trying to make this transition into being a paid speaker. And I have been speaking publicly for on the edge of way too long. That's the official term. And I don't think I've been paid as a speaker other than a handful of times where it was an honorarium. So thank you for showing up. Here's payment for doing the thing you're doing. And those are usually at high end private technical conferences. But I've never been paid, I would say, for a keynote or at a community event to be a speaker. More times than not, those are volunteer basis. You might be covered for your travel and for your accommodations while you're there, but you're not paid for being there. And the conversation with James, he's trying to make that jump where he wants a company or maybe some sort of social group to pay him to come do a talk. And I think that's fascinating. And I chalk it up to I'm just jealous because I would love to achieve that too. I just don't understand the process of how you go from speaking primarily at, let's call them speaking for free to speaking for pay over time. Love to see if you guys have any thoughts on that. Sean, we'll start with you.
All right. Well, I haven't done as much speaking. I came to the local user group out in Virginia Beach that Kevin used to run, and then I eventually helped out with a little bit, the HamptonRoads.net user group. And that was probably the first time I have ever spoke at anything. Eventually, a few months in, you were doing lightning rounds, like quick little speeches or talks right before the main speaker would get on and do their talk. And you can always encourage everybody, hey, anything you're learning or doing, sign up for a lightning talk. It doesn't have to be super polished or anything. It's not like you're the main presenter of the night, but you can hop up here for 10 minutes and do a quick little discussion on something, get a little practice speaking, and you'll probably learn something from speaking out of it at the same time. And that actually worked. I think I did one on TypeScript when I was learning TypeScript. Got up in front of everybody and did a little lightning talk. It went pretty well. Enjoyed it. And that was really the first time ever, I think, got in front of people physically to do a speech. I've done a lot virtually, and it's completely different. I can talk to people virtually. I can do presentations online all day long, easy peasy. But in person, it's just a different feeling, and it's a much different experience than I'm used to.
I have a book that I have not finished reading, so I'm not going to talk too much about it, but it was recommended to me, and it's called The Referrable Speaker. And the person who recommended it to me had gone from not being paid at all to do any speaking engagements to having regular speaking engagements for pay. So I'm assuming it works for others. And the chapter that I've gone through does talk about one of the key things to being a paid speaker or becoming a paid speaker is that you can really only have one or two talks. And it's one or two talks that you have just honed just to be so precisely presented that you hit very specific key marks and it's documented. You're going to talk about X, Y, and Z. And then you take these talks and you start doing them for free or at a very low cost. And the big thing you do is after you've presented that talk, and if it's well received, very much assuming it's well received, you go to the folks in charge and you ask them, can you refer me to other people in this space who have similar groups? So a couple of the case studies in the book are specifically about people who started with, had a talk, it was well received, was then referred to other groups where they went and did the same talk. They refined it, also refined it for the audience that they knew they were presenting to. So depending on what it is, if your group always talking to the developers, you're probably going to have one stick to stick to. But if you have something that's a little bit more generic, maybe you can talk to a group of doctors or a group of laborers or you name it. The group is going to change the dialogue of the talk a little bit, and being aware of who you're going to talk to helps to talk immensely. But so
Yeah,
I
and
want
you
to
and I,
recommend the book for everyone out there, The Referrable Speaker. I haven't finished it, but if you finish it before I do, you should come talk to me. I think it's a good idea to kind of distinguish the types of paid speaking. I think what James is trying to get into is you're going to pay me for a keynote. I want to get up, I want to talk for 45 minutes, I'm
right.
done. And you rinse, repeat that a couple times a year, that can turn into its own very good form of income. In the Referrable Speaker, they talk about folks who basically create a full-time job just out of speaking, where they were originally doing their day job and they started speaking on the side, and the rates for their speaking went up and the number of inquiries for their speaking went up. So naturally, their full-time job just becomes speaking. And I think that's what James is trying to transition to.
Yeah, and that does make sense. And I think a good path to that is if you have a book that's really popular. So you think about like JavaScript, the good parts, right? With Crawford, and he pretty much became a public speaker after that, doing keynotes and everything else. And a lot of other popular authors have as well. But I definitely wouldn't suggest folks go to write a book just go down that path. But that could be a benefit if you do decide to go down the painful process of writing a book.
And it goes back to the earlier conversation too. You got to be visible. You have to have a public brand that you're controlling the narrative of. No one's going to hire you to speak if they don't know who you are. And especially if they don't know what you do or what you talk about. So it's extremely important to make sure you're putting yourself out there in some way, shape, or form. And I know there's a lot of private people, a lot of introverts who shiver at the thought of being a public person. But in a lot of cases, that's the easiest way to succeed, is just putting yourself out there. And that way people know who you are. They know what kind of quantity you are.